Lord, we pray for your wisdom for our elected officials. Director, Texans Homeschool Freedom, Emily Ford. Okay, sorry.
Or not.
Still, yes, okay. Homeschool Freedom Coalition. There we go.
Hi there, thank you. Is that good? Okay. Thank you all for coming. We are grateful to have every one of you here. My name is Emily Ford. I'm the executive director of a national organization called the Homeschool Freedom Coalition. I was homeschooled my whole life. I'm one of 11 kids. My parents are one of the families that went to court in our state to make it legal to homeschool there. I have 5 nieces and nephews under the age of 18. I lost count like 10 kids ago. I love them all, but anyway, I am here because my whole past has been homeschooling. I graduated from a Christian college with a degree in Christian education, and I went to work for a homeschool curriculum company, not Classical Conversations, but that's okay. And I worked there for 10 years. I helped about 5,000 families start homeschooling, and I taught workshops in about every homeschool convention anywhere. I met my husband at a homeschool convention. We got engaged at the Arlington convention. I just lived my whole life around homeschooling. So for me, homeschooling is my past. It's my entire career, if you will, although my career is really my family. But for my family, homeschooling has always been a passionate topic, and so when I moved to Texas, I thought, good, I'm in a safe place, I have nothing to worry about. Texas is, never going to fall to some of these bills that we see. I would talk to families in New York and Pennsylvania. That's not going to happen to me in Texas, but here we are today. So we're here today because of poorly written, poorly worded, snake in the grass, Trojan horse school choice bills. These bills do not serve homeschoolers. I don't personally know a single homeschooler that wants them. These bills are not coming organically out of homeschooling. They're coming from another agenda that is not, I don't believe, organic to homeschooling. This isn't really about choice. Texans already have the choice of how to educate their children. This is about control. This is about funding. This is about controlling what books our kids read, what they're taught, and what they believe once they become adults. And so that's why I'm here today. I believe these Trojan horse school choice bills are going to signal that it's the end of homeschooling as an ideology. I think that in 20 years, thanks to the funding strings and the regulation strings, all education is going to be government education. Even if you're doing it at home, even if mom's your teacher, it's going to be controlled. What your thoughts, what you think, what you're taught is going to be controlled by the people paying for it. And so my three biggest, and there will be other people making better points than me, my three biggest objections to this bill specifically, but these bills all over the country, are the regulation creep. Everybody knows that what the government funds, it controls. We want that, honestly. We want transparency. If our government's going to take our tax dollars, we want to make sure that they're using it well, so we would expect them to have some control over where the money goes. They're going to, there's all these phrases, with the shekel comes the shackle, with what the government funds, it controls. There's no universe where they're going to pay us to homeschool our kids to whatever we want to teach them. There will come control. There are some organizations that will tell you that's a myth. The reality is these bills haven't been law long enough anywhere in America for them to say that confidently. And in fact, places like Sweden, where they did pass these bills, 10 years later, homeschooling was illegal. So we have no confidence just because it hasn't happened yet. We're in way too short of a time frame to say it's not going to happen at all. So that regulation creep is my number one concern. After that would come data harvesting, and I think a lot of people, I'm in a kind of the younger generation, where privacy's a myth. They've got my name, they've got my information, they've got my family's address. I signed up for a field trip, so I'm sure they have all my information. That's not the kind of information that we're worried about. What they'll have at the end, let's say these bills pass. In 20 years, they'll be able to search a database and say, tell me what homeschoolers in Texas use a curriculum that teaches the Second Amendment is still vital to America's, ideological survival. What homeschoolers in Texas or in these other states believe that a baby is a baby from conception? I can print out a list of those people. Give me every homeschooler with 15-year-old sons or older, that has been taught this stuff. And let me get a database list of that, please. And I can print those out. That's the kind of data harvesting we do not need in Texas or anywhere in America. The third thing would be, and this is for my older, my parents' generation of homeschooling, this is inevitably going to lead to forced conformity. You're not going to nudge people into approved curriculum choices with approved testing, and mandatory testing is in some of the bills here in Texas. It's in a lot of the bills nationwide. You're not going to push people towards mandatory testing without nudging them towards the same product that we're getting from government school. And so for those reasons, this bill is not really school choice. This isn't really the choice homeschoolers have asked for. This bill is, like I've said, a Trojan horse, a snake in the grass. This bill is a bait and switch for homeschoolers. And so we're not opposed to, and I'm speaking for my organization only, but I'm not opposed to all versions of school choice. I don't have an ethical problem or a moral problem with Christian homeschool families keeping their tax dollars. I don't think we have an obligation to fund this system that's destroying us and that is destroying our country. But I want a bill that simply leaves your taxes in your pocket and simply never takes them from you. Doesn't take them from you and give them back. Plus $5,000, those sorts of bills. I mean, it's like you have to be really out of it to be like, yeah, I deserve 10 grand to homeschool my kid. So to that end, I would like to very quickly talk about how we got here, right? So I've been in the homeschool movement. I was overhearing Andy Pryor earlier talk about his family going to court. This has been my whole life, and I'm nearly 40. So for me, homeschooling has just always been part of it. We were hiding under the bed when the cops are talking to Dad, and it's always been there. Why is it that after 30 years, we still don't have an organized, galvanized, effective political lobby for homeschoolers? Why in the state of Texas do we have more homeschoolers than Houston ISD? But somehow Houston ISD gets everything they need, or they would say not, of course. They would say they're underfunded massively. But how come homeschoolers here in Texas are stuck with this? Well, we have to ask, and if they tell us no, that's what they do sometimes. So I would like to talk about that really very quickly. There are organizations that exist to do this for us. We are supposed to, be at home with the 5 kids and try to make dinner. And we donated to organizations that were supposed to defend our right to homeschool here in Texas and nationally. They told us, give us your donations. We'll put on the fancy suits. We'll talk to the powerful people. You make dinner. You take care of your kids. You homeschool. We'll go to the capitals. We'll argue with the people. We'll talk to the legislators. But I think there was, and I do believe in many states, especially, this isn't just here in Texas, that those organizations had every good intention of doing that. But I think the foundation of how those organizations started is part of why they're ineffective. And what that is homeschooling started for many states. It was during the Cold War era, and it was, if you're not putting your kids in government school, you must be a communist. So homeschoolers were like, no, we're good citizens, we're nice, we're kind, we'll pay our taxes, we're not violent, we're not going to do anything mean. That has been the philosophy for so long, and yes, we're not violent, we're not mean, but that's been the philosophy for so long that homeschoolers have been trained by the same organizations ostensibly defending them. Homeschoolers have been trained to be very nice, very nice. Always just, show up and thank them and pray for them, and would you like a donut? Is there anything we can do? That tactic is not working. It's not working in Texas at all. In fact, the opposite is working in Texas. It is not working the tiniest bit anywhere. Homeschoolers have been too nice, too long, and I mean this in a legislative sense. We have said, I know, I can hear Faith laughing.
Time to flip some tables.
So, essentially, if you look around, and I would bet my son's life on this one, the state of Texas has probably given in the tens of millions of dollars to these organizations over the years. Tens of millions. They are not here today. Look around, they are not here. They have taken tens of millions of dollars on the faith that we put in them, that we're going to make dinner, and we're going to take care of our families, and we're going to do the laundry, and they're going to fight for our homeschool rights, and they are not here. That's a big problem because even in the states where Texas's situation is somewhat unique in that regard, there are state organizations all over the country that are fighting tooth and nail against these bills, but they're still not being effective, and I believe that's a tactical problem. I think it's the foundational ideas of be nice, be nice, be nice, be nice. There have to be some legislative electoral consequences for homeschool, for representatives that don't represent our homeschool ideas. And essentially, we're firm believers in representative government, but if they don't represent homeschoolers, they're not representing us, so they're not our guy, all right? They may not be a bad guy, but they're not our guy. And so we have to start to think in different terms than, well, I'll be the free door knocking army. That's what I can do. I can't donate to his campaign, but I can knock on doors for him. You know, we all did that, right? I mean, who didn't knock on doors for every Republican candidate their whole lives, every conservative candidate? That has to stop. They don't get the free door knocking army out of homeschooling. They don't get unlimited help and support if they're going to stab us in the back. We need new operational principles about how to fight these legislative fights, and being super nice and, you know, praying, sending them thank you cards. Those things are fine to do, but at the end of the day, when it comes to re-election time, those legislators care about keeping their seats. And homeschoolers have been trained by these organizations to think, I can step all over homeschoolers and they're still going to be nice. They're not going to help any other candidates. They're not going to stop donating. There's no consequences. There's no consequences to legislators that sell us out. Homeschoolers have not been trained to bring consequences to bear on them. Homeschoolers aren't even sure what those consequences would look like. It's like, well, you know, I can't go in there and yell at the governor. It's like, no, but you did pay an organization that said they would. And they're not here, so we definitely need a change in tactics. This is our kids' future. You know, we're not here to beg for crumbs. This is, from me and my family, this is a moral imperative. We're going to fight this fight until Faith and I are the last two people standing up here. I've known Faith for over 10 years. She used to babysit my son so I could work at the Arlington Convention all these years ago when he was an infant. And if you'll take, you know, an infant all day, you care about homeschooling. That's a lot of work. So I've stood here, you know, for about 10 minutes now. I've kind of ranted and raved about the problems we're facing. But I want to leave with some hope that there is a new generation coming. There is new tactics on the horizon. We are not going to do this forever. The organizations, the ones that truly want to learn and change their methodology to be more effective, we are here to help. The ones that are not going to change their tactics and are happy with their cush seat and their fancy suits and the position of power that they've achieved, they are not going to be representative of homeschooling for much longer. Their ideas are not the ideas that have driven homeschooling for decades, and they will not drive them into the future. So that said, it's time to fight for homeschooling, but in a different way than we're used to. Obviously, if you're here, you probably already agree with that, right? If we thought we could just be nice to them and they'd vote the way we want, we wouldn't have driven here today. We know that at some point you have to say, all right, enough's enough. You said you were going to deliver for us. You said you were this kind of a candidate. You said you stood for these homeschool rights or parental rights or whatever. It's time to deliver for homeschooling, and we're done playing nice, and I don't mean that in any sort of revolutionary way, but I mean tactically. We need new tactics from new ideas from a different generation. I was not raised during the Cold War, and I do not think that I'm a commie. I'm much more worried that they're going to turn us all into commies in 40 years. And so it's time to fight for homeschooling in this new way, and I hope y'all are here for it. I'm very proud. Are you next, Faith? Lauren Gideon.
Those who love peace,
yes, I am very proud to hand the mic off to Lauren Gideon.
Well,
she
is
is of Choose Education Independence, and she will give you all of her details.
Thank you so much. Let's clap for Emily. Oh my goodness. It's windy. Very inspirational. And it's cold out here. So I invite you all to engage. I promise it will help keep you warm. All right, if you engage. This is a rally after all. Have you been to this? I know we're homeschoolers, but usually we make noise at rallies. Is there any noise? Thank you. So as she said, my name is Lauren Gideon. I am the Director of Government Relations for Classical Conversations, and the thing that she was talking about is the Education Independence Network. It is kind of something we're developing as we rethink about these ideas. I don't know if you guys have been through the last couple of decades with homeschooling and school choice, but it seems like when I joined CC, it was like, yeah, we thought that meant options, right? And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, we're redefining the terms. Okay, hold on. So a lot of this has to do with rethinking how we think about these things. And so that's kind of be the theme of what I'm going to say. First, I stand before you with gratitude. I was going to say how awesome the weather was here. I'm from Iowa, so it's a little bit nicer, but I think you guys could have done better. Maybe next time. Second, I'm incredibly grateful for organizations like Texas for Homeschool Freedom, who have framed their whole identity around championing the responsibility of parents apart from the influence of the state. And lastly, I am thankful for like-minded families like you who stand in the gap and who have decided that you'd rather be free than have it be fair. You may be wondering what in the world that means, so I'm glad you asked. I'm going to unpack that idea. The opening line of our Declaration of Independence begins, when in the course of human events, this document outlines self-evident truths, principles our founding fathers held dear, but these truths weren't self-evident to the British Crown or to Parliament. These rights the patriots fought for were easier to declare than they were to secure. Men, women, children sacrificed everything, lives, fortunes, sacred honor, for the cause of freedom. No rational person recalling the price of American independence would argue that the cost was fair. Yet these heroes chose to fight because they'd rather be free than have it be fair. You see, the pursuit of fairness sounds appealing because we often equate it with justice, but there's another more insidious idea being planted in the minds of families today. It is the toxic seed of equity, which is simply the predictable child of jealousy and covetousness. This is the same seed that breeds Marxist revolution and communist regimes. It's being sold to families in the same way that the forbidden fruit was peddled to Eve, with lies of entitlement and equality. But we are here today to expose those lies. Our freedom is our birthright, and we will not trade it for the shackles of stolen wealth. We'd rather be free than have it be fair. Like many of you here today, I'm a second-generation homeschooling parent. Like you, I stand on the shoulders of courageous families who fought tirelessly to free themselves from compulsory education laws and reclaim their God-given right to educate their children. They understood the cost. They understood the toll it would take on their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. Not one of them hesitated. Why? Because they'd rather be free than have it be fair. I know many of us get frustrated that not everyone in the homeschool movement shares these deep convictions, but I want to remind you this frustration is not unique to our generation. Our founding fathers faced the same kinds of divisions within their ranks. Let me share with you a quote from Samuel Adams. It's going to be a little bit spicy. I think it's Andrew Pudewa that says if you're going to say something spicy, you quote somebody else instead of saying it yourself, so I too will do that. This is what Samuel Adams said of his fellow countrymen that did not share his convictions. He said, "If you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating cost of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsels or your arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you are our countrymen." Why, oh why, would we echo these blunt words? It's because we'd rather be free than have it be fair. There's one more person I'd like to mention, unlikely hero, someone I'm proud to call my boss. Even before I worked for Classical Conversations, I was inspired by his unwavering commitment to his convictions. Robert Bortons is the CEO of the world's largest homeschool organization, Classical Conversations, which serves 45,000 families across our nation. With a new wave of public funding flooding the education market, both Robert and Classical Conversations could easily capitalize on these taxpayer-funded revenue streams. So why isn't he? The answer is simple. He'd rather be free than have it be fair. In fact, many of Robert's competitors are gladly accepting these funds from participating families and institutions. On paper, it might seem like an unfair disadvantage for him to stand firm and resist, but Robert Bortons invests his own profits to fight these programs. To explain it, I know we got kids in the room, so to explain it in a way even my 8-year-old would understand, Robert literally spends his own money to stop people from giving him money. Why would he do that? If you know Robert like I know Robert, you'd understand. He'd rather be free than have it be fair. And with that, I'd like to invite you to join me in welcoming Robert Bortons, CEO of Classical Conversations, to the mic.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you everyone for being here today. I really appreciate it. I always, to piggyback on that, is like, okay, I'm going to go fly around and try to convince people not to take money from the government. not the easiest job. And unfortunately, I'm not getting paid by the teachers' unions to do this, despite some rumors that are out there on X. Since it's St. Patrick's Day, I thought it would be good to start with a little quote from him on education. He said, "I would rather have learning joined with virtue than all the treasures of kings." And, right behind us, or behind you all in front of me, is the state capitol. And what they want to do is give you the king's crumbs in order for you to, as Lauren said, lick his hand and hope the chains are light on your feet. And so today we're here to save homeschooling here in the state of Texas and continue to fight for education independence across this country. At Classical Conversations, we've been fighting this in many states and gearing up to fight it in many more. And so this isn't unique to the state of Texas. And there's been some victories where we were able to stop it. When it was on the ballot in Kentucky and in Nebraska, both states that voted for President Trump, they both voted down school choice. And so when the people know what it is, it's clap. I'm going to do my own Jeb Bush moment, clap. I'm always bad at that. I hit something and start. But so what we need to understand, though, is these people are being pressured. And I do believe you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. But Emily is right that these people are being pressured by people like Elon Musk and Donald Trump to pass bills that they do not support so they won't get primaried. And she's exactly right. We need to stop knocking on their doors, or say, if I knock on your doors and you vote for school choice, I'm going to go knock for your opponents next time. And sometimes you have to decide, you might be great 90% of the time, but this is the freedom issue, right? They were right. They've called school choice the civil rights issue of our generation, and they are right, because we will have no civil rights once the government starts funding all of this education. All right? So, we have got to fight. This is our fight right now. We have to stand up. The blood of patriots made this country free. Luckily, we don't have to shoot our way out of communism yet, but my grandparents did. My wife's grandparents did. And guess what? When they say public school was founded on Prussian education models, that's actually correct. But most people can't identify Prussia on a map and have no idea that is pre-World War I Germany. So public education funded by the government, is what started the First World War. All right, so that is the education system that they brought here into the United States. And so it is important that we know our history. And actually, the voucher fight might seem new, but it has been a fight that's been around since the founding of our government. James Madison actually argued against vouchers in his letter, Memorial Remonstrance. He said, "Religion, aka education, which we owe our Creator, and the manner of discharging it, can be directed only by reason and conviction, not by force or violence." And so when he was talking about force or violence, he was talking about taxes. All right, they will steal your home if you do not pay your property taxes. They will throw you in jail if you do not pay your income taxes. It is immoral for us to ask the government to throw our neighbors in jail if they won't pay to educate our kids. And that is why we're out here today fighting against school choice. The Bible is really clear. I want to talk about there's the biblical argument against school choice, and then there's the conservative argument. So let's just start with the biblical argument. The government has no responsibility. God gave it no jurisdiction over your child's mind.
Amen.
And as soon as you start taking that money, you are signing over that right to the government, of which God did not appoint them to have. And I like to say, Esau sold his birthright for a cup of soup. Do not sell your birthright for $2,000 a year.
Oh, yeah.
So, let me tell you a couple things about these bills. One, it's going to increase taxes. They're running it through their government math machine, their Common Core math machine, to say that it's going to save them money. But the fiscal notes on these bills say it's going to cost the taxpayer $5 to $10 billion a year more than it's costing you now. And they say, oh, well, we've got all this extra money. Well, that's money they stole from you to pay for, and they didn't use it well. They should give it back to you. They shouldn't steal more money from you in the future. Deuteronomy 6:7 tells us that it is our job as parents to educate the children in the way they should go. Romans 13, the only thing that the government, civil government, has responsibility for is to ensure justice and to promote good, not pay for good. And that is a big problem that we have in the United States in general, is promote the general welfare was just being promoted, not pay for it. And we have got that confused in our country. Now, I had James Lindsay, not a Christian, on my podcast, Refining Rhetoric, where we did a school choice series. Go check that out. But he basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, school choice is a hint of Marxism, aka redistribution of wealth, with a side of fascism, aka approved vendors. And so the problem with the free people such as myself and these other homeschoolers, second generation homeschoolers, homeschooling my own kids, is our knees won't bend to go lick the boot of our public officials. Not for $2,000 a year, not for $10,000 a year. God, on Romans, I just want to talk a little bit more about what we're seeing from a historical perspective on school choice bills. Alaska, because of how wide and big and cold it is, has had school choice for decades. And what they have done is basically make it so that you're not allowed to open a Bible, have an open Bible in your schoolroom if you take their money. Before we knew about vouchers and everything, they had a program where Alaska state government was buying our curriculum and giving it to the homeschooling parents. Again, we didn't know that was going on. This was like 20 years ago. And they would open it up and use a marker to mark out the name of Jesus. I mean, what are you teaching your kids? That you're going to bend your knee to the government and black out the name of Jesus? All right, that is. I have sins that I'm going to answer for in the Bema seat, and I don't want anyone to have to answer those for me. But I do not want to answer for those sins at all. Right? They want your educational independence to be a political football. That's their goal. They want you to have to vote for them every year to be independent and not vote for the other side, or not show up to vote. That is really the driving force behind school choice. When I'm at some of these think tanks and these different conservative groups that are pushing this, that's really what their goal is they want your child's freedom to be on the ballot every single election cycle. And so as soon as you start taking the money, or even your neighbors start taking the money, that scope creep is going to happen. And as Emily said, it should, right? We want, as the conservative policy, is that when the government gives you money, there should be accountability for it so that you're not wasting it. Well, guess what they're doing in Florida? In the state of Florida, they've got people remodeling their homes and the state government's paying for it. So do you want your tax, because they got to have a nice new schoolroom, so why shouldn't the state pay for their remodeling projects? Right? In Arizona, they'll pay for your horseback riding lessons. In Florida, they'll pay for you to go to Disney World. So yeah, of course, that sounds nice, but is that what our taxes should be going to? Of course not. In Alaska, I'll go back to Alaska. So Teen Pact, last time I was here, I went to a Teen Pact event. They can't hardly get anyone to their events in Alaska because they don't take the voucher money. And so parents are like, why would I send them to that when the state will pay for me to send their kids to somewhere else? And so when Marxism gets into your bloodline, right, people stop being free. They stop thinking about, what God has commanded them to do and everything like that. And so this is really, really a big fight. Couple other Bible things. If the government was not designed by God to do something, then if they tax you and they do it, it's stealing. So out of the 10 commandments, thou shalt not steal is being broken with this school choice bill. Thou shalt not covet. I mean, the whole entire marketing behind the school choice bill is covetousness, which we know is part of Marxism, and no other God before me. They think our God is bankrupt.
Yeah.
They think the government needs to bail them out. How are you going to stand before God and tell him that he was bankrupt? Right? These people aren't thinking about the Bema seat when they're going to be out there. This is a poverty worldview. This says that our God is not a king with horses on 10,000 hills, that he does not know every hair on our head. And this is what they want to shove down our children's throats, because they know that they want them to be pawns in their political games. Now, you'd like to think that this is a new thing, and it is here in the United States, and they'll throw out things like, well, this hasn't happened in any other state. And it's like, yeah, these states just passed these bills. But let's use Sweden as our example. 1992, they passed, by a conservative government, a sweeping school choice bill. 4 years later, they've never elected a conservative government again. I wonder why. Probably because they conditioned everyone to think that the government should be redistributing wealth to whatever is good. Right? So you're conditioning this mindset in there. After a few years, they said, okay, well, equality and equity isn't there because the good private schools are charging more, so private education can't charge more than what the voucher is. And then they passed a state civil government curriculum and said you had to do tests towards that to make sure everybody was getting a good education. And then they started a school inspectors to make sure the schools were actually doing the state curriculum. And then if you were a Christian and you were teaching, things like male and female, well, they would shut down your school. And eventually they said, well, why should you be allowed to homeschool? The state's going to pay for your kid's education. And so then they made it illegal to homeschool. So that was the path they took over a 19-year period. Well, I'll tell you this. It took the socialists in Sweden nearly 8 years to make a state curriculum. Here in Texas, they just passed the state curriculum, I think, the last election cycle, or have one this election cycle, called the Blue Bonnet. So their conservative government, right there behind you, is 10 years ahead of the socialists in their game plan. We do business in Florida, and Florida is one of those gold standards. And whenever they say gold standards, they mean that no strings were attached in the original bill. We have a partnership with the college there where our students can get concurrent enrollment, get college credit while they're doing our program. Because of this new program, the state legislatures in Florida passed a law to make it illegal for the college to charge more money than what they are doing, and actually made it illegal for them to charge the Florida students anything at all because of this subsidy that they're getting. And so the conservative group in Florida is 8 years ahead of the socialists in Sweden. So when people say this hasn't happened here, they're actually ahead of schedule compared to what the socialists were doing. So, yes, it is absolutely an issue. The other thing with this bill is it's not, the Texas GOP voted on 8 top priorities. School choice is not in a single one. But these representatives aren't getting any of the work that you actually voted on them to do because, Governor Abbott, Elon Musk, et cetera, are pressuring them to try to get the school choice bill passed. That's going to cost tens of billions of dollars. 70% of it's going to go to students that are already private educating, so it's just a subsidy for the welfare. I'm not advocating for more money for homeschoolers, but they actually treat you as second-class citizens, because for a private school student, they're going to give $10,000, but for you lowly homeschoolers, they're only going to give you $2,000. So they're treating you like a second-class citizen in the bill itself. I'll tell you that the other thing to be aware of is, these elected officials, they don't understand that they are pawns in a bigger game. Like they want to get kids out of public school, or they say failing public schools, but it's always like, well, you fund it, you set the legislative priorities for it, you set the restrictions on it, it's your failure. So like as a business owner, if I got a resume from, a public school, the state legislators saying that they wanted to help me in my business, and I look at their list of failures, which is all that we would ever get from these state legislators, I would say, hell no, you must go. Pardon my language. And so absolutely, this is not the people you want to get in bed with. They want to wed a sick government with a healthy family. Right? This is you are healthy, and we want to bring in their welfare to it. We know how the war on poverty destroyed the African American family, right? Because we don't need to be together if the government's going to fund all of us, right? This is an affront to fatherhood. God gave fathers the responsibility to take care of their children, not the civil government. And so a lot of the welfare state and those sorts of mentality and mindsets are going to creep into the homeschool movement and into private schools, which is what they want, so that we're always begging them every 2 years for our freedom. And we don't want to have to beg them, right? That's not, the Declaration of Independence for the United States, Declaration of Independence of Texas, right? We're independent. We don't need their money. We don't need their oversight. All that is going to destroy our education. The other thing that they talk about, these bills, they're really what I call delivery vehicles. So everyone has a cell phone. What they do now, the hackers have gotten smart. And the school choice advocates are kind of doing the same thing, or the United Nations, is you can download an app to your phone. It doesn't have any viruses on it. But what it does is open up a hole in your antivirus devices, in your antivirus, so that they can deliver later, sometimes weeks, months, even years later, viruses and hacks to your phone. And so this school choice bill, HB2 or SB3, it's a delivery vehicle. Yeah, they're not going to put the viruses in it initially, but once they get you hooked on the strings, once they get you addicted to the money, that's when they'll start delivering the poison pills. And that's ultimately the goal of the United Nations. This is not a bill, or this is not ideas that came out of conservatism. This is stuff that came out of the United Nations, paid for by Bill Gates and the Waltons. Either of those, if you love the COVID response, you'll love school choice.
Yeah.
Because the same people are funding it that funded all the research for the COVID response. And so ultimately, it is our freedom. Our job is to hold a mirror to the face. These are not conservative bills. I want to just close out. There's a nice school choice, myth versus fact. I just encourage everyone to pick that up and hand it out to the legislators as you talk to them today. A lot of good points on it. So they'll say school choice puts power and ownership back in the hands of families. Well, we already have choice, and ownership is never provided when someone else is funding it. Ownership requires you to do the hard work. They'll say school choice is just giving you your tax dollars back. Well, I'll tell you, my friend in Arizona, they have 6 kids. They are turning down $42,000 a year from the state of Arizona. Well, they don't pay that in property taxes. They don't pay that in income taxes. So they have to get it from someone else. So none of these bills actually give you your money back. They all redistribute someone else's wealth. School choice gives family educational options. We already have educational options in the state of Texas. We have homeschooling. We got private schools, charter schools, public schools, Montessori schools. All this is doing is funding choices, which again is taking tax dollars and redistribute them. School choice is a better use of taxpayers' money. Well, if they have billions of dollars that they took from us that they didn't spend, they should return it to us. School choice moves funding to students, not systems. Well, I'm going to tell you that it just makes all the systems funded by the government. So it's taking the 100 different systems that exist in the state of Texas and just making it one single payer tax-funded system. So if you loved Obamacare, you'll love school choice. School choice will help private schools ... become public schools. Because they will eventually have to comply with everything. I'll tell you, in the state of North Carolina, all of our best private schools are not accepting the money because they don't need it. They already have a waiting list. It's all the poor schools, the schools that were barely getting by, that are accepting it. Corey DeAngelis, who is the school choice evangelist, among other things, don't Google it. Before he was an evangelist, he was a researcher, and his research showed that school vouchers are mostly accepted by poor-performing schools that can't make it on their own. So in Arizona, there was a charter school that was absolutely failing, was about to be shut down. Once they passed the ESAs, they just transformed into a private school and got that same funding again. And so what we've seen from the research is that vouchers do not work. They do not actually provide a better educational outcome. Now, even if it was neutral, you know, it's just another way of spending money, maybe, but it's really, hard work is important. Sacrifice is important. If you're not willing to work hard and sacrifice, you're not going to achieve very much. And so, just the whole entire idea of the government funding it, you can't be educated without working hard, and part of that is making those sacrifices. And so this bill will not actually improve results at all. School choice will help more people homeschool. I mean, the expensive part of homeschooling is foregoing the job. That's why a lot of homeschool parents work from home. $2,000 a year is not going to suddenly make it so someone who couldn't afford to homeschool can suddenly afford to homeschool. And then school choice breaks education monopolies. We actually don't have an education monopoly right now. Like I said, there's private schools, there's home schools, Montessori schools, charter schools, public schools. What school choice actually does is create a monopoly, because everything is going to be funded by the government. And so if there's a single payer, then that's what we're going to get. A couple other things real quick and then I'll close. So during COVID, there's two different court cases that went to the Supreme Court. One that every single hospital had to vaccinate their employees, and one that said big businesses over 100 people have to vaccinate their employees. The big business one, we signed on to that lawsuit, and that lawsuit won. The hospitals did not. And why did the hospitals did not? Because they are mostly funded by the government through Medicaid and Medicare. And so if the government was paying their bills, they had to do whatever the government said. And so just like school choice, if your private schools in Texas had been taking the money, they would have had to follow all the same rules as the public schools, right? Because they're not going to be allowed to discriminate. So ultimately, once you take their money, you are under their boot. You have to lick it every 2 years in order to keep your freedom. And a free people do not do that. And so I encourage all of you to go out there, persuade them to vote no, or to get homeschooling out of these bills, and do not give up your freedom. Do not sell it for a bowl of soup. And remember who we belong to and who our children belong to. And together we can defeat school choice here in Texas. This is the front line of the battle. Thank you for coming. And I'll turn it over to Faith. Close this out.
Can y'all get closer? A lot of y'all are in the sun. All right, good morning, fellow Texans for Homeschool Freedom people. I am Faith Bussey. I am the president of Texans for Homeschool Freedom. I want to start by saying thank you. Thank you for making the sacrifices necessary to choose homeschooling for your children. And thank you for making the sacrifices necessary to be here to fight the preservation of that liberty for others in this state. This organization was started about 10 years ago by a bunch of folks who felt betrayed by that other homeschool organization, out there talking about how they represent all homeschoolers in this state. But we have news for every legislator in this building. Texas Homeschool Coalition does not represent me. And they don't represent you, and they don't even represent the best interests of homeschoolers in this state. They are completely comfortable trading our hard-fought freedoms for influence, trading their once good name for lies and slander that grow bigger and bigger every session. They think a few $1,000s from a new government program is what homeschoolers want. Is that what we want?
No!
We quite literally just want to be left alone. And we're here today to tell the same body that broke the public school system that we don't want their help. Every session, the fake school choice pushers tell us that we can't judge the bill until it's been filed and we've read all the details. Then the bills get filed and they're nearly identical to the bills that were filed before. The last pile of garbage they tried to shove down our throats last time. But there's nuance in this one. This one will really protect homeschoolers. They say, trust them. They know for sure that this will not impact homeschoolers at all. And if you don't like it, oh, it's my favorite phrase. If you don't like it, just don't take the money. They forget that we are homeschoolers, which means at some point we've learned basic economics. We've learned that when government picks winners and losers, we all lose. When government shows up to help you, they're actually going to hurt you. So when the government tells you that they are going to give you a choice, we need to shove that right back in their face and tell them we already have the choice because God gave it to us and we don't need their permission. And we know, just like Robert said, that their shekels will come with shackles. And we are so grateful for Classical Conversations and Homeschool Legal Defense Association and the Homeschool Freedom Coalition for partnering with us to make this Capital Day a success. This is the rally part, but now I'm getting down to the nitty-gritty of what we're actually going to be doing in this building. So I have to give you instructions now. First, we're going to make use of the entrances. There's at least 2 right here that we can walk right into. You'll go through security, and we're going to meet in the rotunda, the big circle. And we're going to do a couple of cheers that we'll practice at the end here for our wonderful photographer, videographer, who has this great setup for us, and we're super grateful for him too. From there, you'll find your floor leader. We have a few floor leaders that have these on. I'm going to be leading a lot of folks down into the E1, E2, the extension area, because there's so many more down there than there are on the ground 1, 2, 3, 4 level. Our floor leaders, like I said, will be wearing some of these, and there might be a couple others, but you'll follow your floor leader to your designated floor. They'll hand you a set of folders for each hallway. We have a folder for every single representative and senator. There's 181 total. We can do that. We can go, we can meet them, we can talk to their staff, we can make these arguments with them, and some of them are going to be like, we're already a no, and we're like, that's great. Have a nice day. But we have some great handouts from HSLDA on the pitfalls of fake school choice. We have our Texans for Homeschool Freedom flyer that we passed out at the Republican State Convention, and it's basically, this is what we were asking the Republicans at the convention. And we meant it then, and we mean it now, and this isn't conservative, and you shouldn't be voting for it. And I loved what Classical Conversations brought, so we'll have some of those too. And then when you are done, we're going to head to the Capitol Grill on the E1 floor. It's the extension. And we'll have lunch there. We'll exchange notes. We'll talk about the offices that we went to. If you want to take notes when you go into the offices, if you're getting feedback and you're like, oh, maybe that's important, because this is a fight. It is tactical. We need to know where these people stand and which ones are with us and which ones we need to push a little bit harder. So feel free to take notes and we can exchange those and when we fellowship with each other at lunch. And many of you have set up meetings with your state reps and senators, so please attend those if you've set them up. For the kids, we have a scavenger hunt on our website that our Classical Conversation friends put together and our lovely creative director Jessica put up on the website. And you can also use this afternoon to take a tour of the Capitol if your work is done. But at 3 o'clock, we'll meet back in the rotunda to close us out and to see everybody home. So now we've stormed the Capitol. Just kidding. Now we work on our cheers. That's what we do. We've got 2. And the first one is THSC does not represent me on 3. 1, 2, 3. THSC does not represent me. That's pretty good. We're going to do it in the rotunda so it'll echo. And the second one is, I say, who are we? You say Texans for Homeschool Freedom. Who are we?
Texans for Homeschool Freedom.
Great. Okay, you got it. So one of my favorite song lyrics is, we fight not for the hate of a tyrant. We fight because of love for what is behind us. And we have a lot of love here and so much to lose. So fight we shall. Now, calmly and respectfully, let's go into the rotunda. Thank y'all.
Man, you guys missed out. Tacos, breakfast tacos. Okay, I'm gonna stop this stream now. We'll talk to you guys.